All right, everybody, welcome to the second edition of The Talk with AVC. I am AVC, and we got a lot to talk about this week, so I'm gonna skip the pleasantries and most of the intro here and just kind of get into it. The time is money. So the MLB regular season has come to an end, so now we are looking to the playoffs, and with that, we are going to have a big preview. We're going to start with New York because we are in New York, and that's what we mostly care about. So now we're looking into the Yankees versus the Twins. That is the first matchup at the ALDS. So they have very almost similar types of teams, but very different in a way. They're both teams that won their division, both powered by very strong offenses. The Twins has actually kind of cooled down a little bit as of late, but they're still a very good offense. The Yankees definitely have the edge in terms of pitching, whether it comes out of the rotation, but mostly out of the bullpen. The Twins lack a real lockdown bullpen. I think that's going to be a big reason why the Yankees will win the ALDS against the Twins. That is my official predictions. The Yankees win. I'm going to go with 4 games. I think just somehow the Twins will manage to take one, probably in Minnesota. I think what's more interesting is less almost of the series, because I think this is a little easier for the Yankees than, say, maybe like the wild card or, say, probably the CS versus the Astros. What's more interesting is who the roster is going to consist of, because the Yankees have a lot of guys that could make the roster. So I put together a little bit of a playoff roster preview here for myself, because I'm trying to think, because I'm hearing all these rumors now that Tanaka might be pitching out of the bullpen, Severino might be pitching out of the bullpen. These rumors need to figure out somebody's got to pitch out of the starting rotation. Somebody's actually got to start these games. So it's almost tough to see who you would actually start game 1, game 2, game 3. Game 1, I'd go probably Paxton. I would say normally Tanaka, but he pitched recently in the Texas series. Paxton really didn't pitch in that series. He pitched like an inning. He had like a little tiny injury scare that was nothing. So I'd guess he's the game 1 starter. Who knows? An update could come out right now that it's somebody else, but that's my guess on who the starter would be. I'd probably go Paxton, then Severino, then Tanaka, and then an opener, then back to Paxton. I'd run a 4-man rotation for the playoffs, for the Yankees at least. But coming out of the bullpen, it's probably going to be, at least according to my guess on the 25-man roster, Happ, CeCe, Canely, Britton, Ottavino, Green, probably Guerin. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but probably him. And then either Cortez Jr. or Sessa, depending on who they want to keep. And, of course, Chapman. I would guess the Yankees would carry 4 outfielders. I'd guess Judge, Gardner, Stanton, and I'd guess Cameron Maybin, not Clint Frazier. I just don't think Clint Frazier has the defense that a playoff team is going to want in their 4th outfielder. Your 4th outfielder has to be able to really play solid defense and more be a contact hitter, preferably a veteran like Maybin. So I think he fits better. Sanchez and Romine are going to be the catchers. Now, as far as the infielders go, it's tricky. Obviously, LeMahieu, obviously Torres. The rest of it's kind of up in the air, but I think we kind of have a idea of who it'll be. If I forget anybody, let me know, but I'm pretty sure this would be it. Probably be Gregorius. It's definitely going to be Gregorius. I don't know what Gio Urshela's health is as of right now, but I haven't heard anything about him being out, so I'd assume he'd be okay and he'd be making the team. I'd like to have Tyler Wade on the roster. I think you need that utility guy who can play a lot of positions, and he can also play the outfield too. And also he's fast, so you can have a pinch runner in the playoffs, which is kind of important. And then there's like Edwin and Voit. the question is because they can't really play other positions other than first base. So the question is, do you want to have two of those guys, or do you want to have another guy who kind of play other infield positions? I just don't see anybody like that on the Yankees roster. I do not have Mike Ford making the ALDS roster. Some people have him making it over Voit because Voit has not been good in his last few games. I just think Voigt's better over Ford. I just think he offers more. I would start Edwin at first, though, anyway. He's got a lot more playoff experience. He's a good playoff player. All right, so we're going to move on to that. We're going to look at the Twins really quick, and then we're going to move into the next baseball matchup. So we got the Twins. This was a team that a lot of people really liked early in the year. As the year went on, though, it kind of became clear. It became clear to me when they couldn't really finish the job in the division right away against Cleveland. They kind of kept Cleveland stringing along, mostly because they couldn't just put away the division. That was due to a couple things. That was due to their bats kind of getting cold at similar times and a lack of consistent pitching. Do they really have the pitching? I don't think so. I mean, they've got Jose Barrios, they've got Jake Odorizzi, who are both solid starters, but I've never seen Barrios. I don't think he maybe pitched once in the playoffs. I don't even remember if he did. And Odorizzi is okay, but I just don't see. I just see their pitching letting them down. I don't see, and there's really nobody big in that bullpen that I'd feel comfortable with bringing in either a big spot in a playoff game or in the ninth inning to shut the door on the Twins roster. I really just don't see that. The Twins, if they want to win, they got to score runs. They got to score runs early. They got to give their pitchers something to work with. That's basically going to have to be their strategy if they want to win, especially against the Yankees. It's going to be tough. But the Yankees could have inconsistencies. They always have with some of their hitters. So if the Twins can be the more consistent hitting team, because the Yankees starters aren't the greatest, I think the Yankees are just going to win. I do see Minnesota grabbing a game, though, especially at home. I see them grabbing one. So we're going to move into the AL wildcard game, which I'm actually really excited to see this game because this should be a really good baseball matchup, which probably means it'll be a blowout because the baseball gods just don't like us. That's really what always seems to happen, but it's the A's and the Rays. It's almost funny to look at because they're similarly yet differently built teams. Oakland has been probably, other than Houston, maybe even more so than Houston, the hottest team in baseball heading into the postseason. They have just been untouchable in certain games. They've beaten Houston a couple times, which is saying something in and of itself. There's no word yet on who's going to start the wildcard game. I'm pretty sure it's Charlie Morton for the Rays. He's been their best pitcher this season. He's a Cy Young candidate. He's pitched amazing. I would definitely go to him in a one-game playoff. For Oakland, I'd guess Sean Manaea, but I don't know, honestly. Yeah, I'd go Sean Manaea. I think that'd be the best course of action for Oakland. The key to this game is just who can, honestly, it's a baseball game, so it's who can score runs early, I think is going to be the thing. I think the A's have a better lineup, but I think Tampa, especially with Charlie Morton, has a better chance of shutting down the A's offense early. Charlie Morton has just been amazing this year, so I don't really see Oakland touching him for much of the game. This seems to me like one of those wildcard games where it's going to be like 3-1 kind of score. It's not going to be a high-scoring game. at least in my opinion. I think it's going to be a really low-scoring game. But honestly, I see Oakland taking it, specifically because they're at home. Honestly, I just really see them taking it. I think if Oakland can get a lead somehow on Morton, get Morton out of the game, their bullpen, I find better than, at least at the back end. I think if you can get to Liam Hendricks in a close game, he'll shut the door for you here. And then you're on to play Houston. This is going to be a really good game. I'm not even going to really speculate too much on who I think because this really is a game that could go either way. But, I mean, this is playoff baseball. These are the types of matchups you really like to see. So we're going to switch gears now to the NL. We're going to go with the NL wildcard game, which I believe is tonight, if I'm not mistaken. It is tonight, yes. Milwaukee and Washington. So the biggest question for these teams are, can Washington's starter, I'd assume Scherzer, hold down the game long enough so the bullpen for Washington isn't a huge factor? And with Milwaukee, can they continue to produce runs without their best player? This is actually an interesting game because the strengths and weaknesses of these teams are kind of odd, honestly. You got Washington with their ridiculous starting rotation, but in a one-game playoff, you only get to use one of them unless you're going to pitch another one out of the bullpen, which I wouldn't do. But you have Scherzer, who's most likely going to start for Washington. I don't even know with the Brewers. Quite honestly, I'll be honest, I don't really know their starting rotation that well. I know it's not great. But the Brewers are a hot team. They're hot at the right time. It does really hurt them not having Yelich. But they've gotten to the playoffs without Yelich. I think they'll put up a fight, but I do see Washington winning this game. But it's going to take a good performance from Scherzer. I'll tell you right now, if Scherzer is bounced from the game early, Washington is in serious trouble because if Washington has to go into that bullpen any earlier than the 6th inning, that does not look good for their chances because Washington, I think, even has the better lineup, especially with Yelich out. You got Rendon, you got Soto. You got some pieces in that Washington lineup. You got pieces in Milwaukee, too. You got Moustakas, you have Grandal. But if Scherzer can get Washington in the 6th inning pitching a good outing, I think Washington takes this one. They've just got to minimize the impact of their bullpen and try to score enough and keep their starter in long enough, especially in this wild game. It's a one-game thing, so hopefully, for their sake, hopefully they can do that. For the Brewers, it's going to be getting to the bullpen early. That's going to have to be their strategy if they want to win this game. Make it a bullpen battle because if it becomes a bullpen battle, Milwaukee has the better bullpen, and they will probably win this game. Switch gears again here to the NLDS. We've got the Cardinals and the Braves. This is another matchup I'm very excited to see. Again, kind of two teams with a lot of with a decent amount of question marks. Let's go with that. Atlanta's being, can their pitching hold up? This is a theme with a couple teams. Pitching is so important in the playoffs, especially your bullpen. You have to be able to get your team out of big spots and shut down games. St. Louis definitely has the edge over Atlanta in this. The Cardinals definitely have the better pitching. The Braves they added some veteran relievers at the deadline that have pitched okay or solid, but they don't have a lot of, I don't want to say star power, but they don't have a lot of juice in that bullpen, if you know what I'm speaking of. They just don't have the firepower that would scare you in the playoffs with that bullpen. Like, I don't feel particularly comfortable with any particular reliever locking down a game, and I don't feel particular with any particular starter on Atlanta winning me a game. I'm not even going to speculate the rotations as to how they're going to do the games. I'd imagine Flaherty would probably pitch game 1 for the Cardinals, unless he pitched recently. That'd be my guess. Atlanta definitely has the lineup edge going in this game. It's close because St. Louis has some decent bats too, but Atlanta definitely has a better lineup. You got Acuna, you got Donaldson, you got Freeman. You got a really solid. Excuse me. You got a really solid lineup there in Atlanta. And they're definitely going to make this difficult for that St. Louis pitching staff the whole series. It's going to be very interesting. I'm not precisely sure. I don't really know if I have a favorite in this matchup. When in doubt, I usually go to the team with the better pitching that I choose to win. So I think I would lean St. Louis. But, St. Louis, their big thing is consistency with the bats. And with Colton Wong maybe out, him being as hot as he was, helped them out a lot during that hot stretch that won them the division. That could be big. But St. Louis's bats have got to put it together and have some consistent hitting. Otherwise, Atlanta might steamroll them if they can get to their pitching. It really just becomes a whole thing. But this is going to be a very interesting playoffs. There's not a lot of favorites. I think in years past, we've been able to just say, oh, we know this team's going to win, this team's going to win, this team is going to win. Especially in the NL, it's kind of a crapshoot. It's really just a shot in the dark with who's got better pitching, really. I've never seen a playoff field, quite honestly, with weaker bullpens. I really haven't. This is got some weak bullpens. You got the Dodgers, even the 1 seed, who don't have a particularly strong bullpen. You've got Atlanta, who doesn't have a particularly strong bullpen. You've got Washington, who I don't even think has a bullpen. I think they just have guys pretending to be a bullpen out there. The lack of pitching, there weren't a lot of big relievers available at the deadline like there's been in previous years, which I think is a main reason why this is the case with a lot of these teams. They didn't really see a lot of relievers to address. Atlanta tried, at least. They tried to grab some relievers who, again, pitched okay, but they're not any star-studded back-end relievers. And, the playoffs in baseball come down to a few things. They come down to contact hitting in spots, solid defense, and good pitching. That's what the playoffs come down to. You got to be able to hit in spots. You got to minimize errors. You got to minimize extra outs. And you got to win the pitching battle. That's how you win in the playoffs. And that's why, again, I always kind of go with whatever team has the better pitching. That's usually my pick if I'm not sure. That's the reason I usually go with that. So that's going to pretty much wrap up. We're going to do a quick little thing here, a little caveat about the Astros and Dodgers. Will we see it again? Will we see an Astros-Dodgers World Series again? My opinion is no. I'm hoping for the Yankees to make the World Series. I'm going to be honest, obviously. But I think they do make it. I can honestly see the Dodgers losing to a team like St. Louis, again, due to pitching. If their starters show up, they're great. They're kind of like Washington. If their starters show up, they're great. Their bullpen, that might get them in some trouble. They're not as bad of a bullpen as Washington, but they're not great. I think they just need to – their lineup needs to show up. They need to have the guys like Bellinger and some of their best players who don't particularly usually play well in the playoffs show up. That's my biggest opinion. The Astros are the Astros. They're just a really good team. Let's all be honest here. All right, so thank you. That was the baseball segment this week on The Talk. It was a lot longer than last week. We had a little bit more to cover. Thank you very much all for listening. If this is the only segment of the day you listen to, thank you very much for listening. But I do hope you join me in the next 2 segments
Which college football and the NFL. College football is going to be a lot shorter this week than it was, just because I have more NFL stuff to cover. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys in the next segment. Thank you very much for listening.